Dr. Marcus Webb stared at the assignment notification on his screen and sighed. Another partnership. Another alien colleague who would probably request a transfer within a month. It wasn't that Marcus was difficult to work with. He just had a habit of being too friendly, too casual, too human for most of the other species on the diplomatic research station. The station orbited a neutral world far from Earth, a place where dozens of species came together to study xenobiology and share scientific knowledge. Marcus had been there for 2 years, and he'd learned that while most aliens appreciated human scientific contributions, they found human social behavior confusing at best. He read the name of his new partner, Zal Nara, a Kelrathi scientist. Marcus had met a few Kelrathi before. They were impressive, insectoid in origin, with sleek exoskeletons that gleamed under the station's lights. They moved with precise grace and spoke in measured, careful tones. Everything about them seemed designed for efficiency and perfection. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Lab Section 7 early. He wanted to make a good first impression. He organized his research materials, checked the equipment, and waited. Zal Nara arrived exactly on time, not a minute early, not a second late. The door slid open, and Marcus got his first look at his new partner. She wore a thick research robe, far heavier than what most Kelrathi wore. The robe concealed her form almost completely, showing only her hands and her face. Her compound eyes were a deep amber color, and her facial structure had the characteristic angular beauty of her species. But something was different. She seemed broader than other Kelrathi he'd met. Her movements were careful, almost hesitant. "Dr. Webb," she said, her voice flat and professional. "I am Zal Nara. I have reviewed your credentials. They are adequate." Marcus grinned, though he knew Kelrathi didn't smile. "Just adequate? I'll have to step up my game." "Nice to meet you, Zal Nara. Please call me Marcus." "That would be inappropriate," she replied. "We are colleagues, not friends." "Sure, okay. Dr. Webb it is." Marcus gestured to the lab equipment. "So, I guess we should talk about the project." Zal Nara moved to the far side of the lab, keeping distance between them. "The project involves studying human adaptation to various gravity environments. It requires physiological monitoring and tissue samples. The data will contribute to understanding how different species colonize diverse planetary conditions." "Right. Sounds fascinating." Marcus pulled up the project files on the main screen. "I've always wondered why humans adapted so well to different gravity levels compared to some other species. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're surprisingly flexible." "Flexibility is a trait of species without specialization," Zal Nara said. There was something odd in her tone, but Marcus couldn't identify it. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Marcus would arrive at the lab, attempt friendly conversation, and receive brief professional responses. Zal Nara was brilliant. Her analysis of the data was sharp and insightful, but she never stayed a moment longer than necessary. Never accepted Marcus's invitations to grab food at the station's cafeteria, and never removed that heavy robe. Marcus noticed other things, too. When other Kelrathi passed them in the corridors, they would glance at Zal Nara and then look away quickly. Some made small clicking sounds that Marcus's translator didn't pick up. Zal Nara's posture would stiffen, but she never responded. One day, Marcus saw her eating alone in an isolated corner of the cafeteria. Every other Kelrathi sat together at a central table, their sleek forms arranged in perfect symmetry. Zal Nara sat with her back to them, her robe wrapped tightly around herself. Marcus's curiosity got the better of him. That evening, he did some research on Kelrathi culture. What he found disturbed him. The Kelrathi had a rigid caste system based on physical perfection. Their society prized specific proportions, specific colors, specific movement patterns. Those who didn't meet these standards were considered inferior. They were given lower positions, avoided socially, and sometimes exiled completely from Kelrathi colonies. The research files showed images of ideal Kelrathi, thin, angular, with perfectly symmetrical exoskeletons. Marcus looked at the images and then thought about Zalnara's concealing robes. He began to understand. A month into their partnership, their supervisor called them both into his office. Commander Threll was a Vorian, a species known for their practical, no-nonsense approach to everything. "Dr. Webb, Zalnara, I have a new assignment for you," Threll said. "We need field research conducted on the moon GX-447, high-gravity environment, excellent for testing human adaptation theories. 3 weeks, isolated research habitat. You'll depart in 2 days." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "Sounds great. Field work is always more interesting than lab work." Zalnara was silent for a long moment. "Commander, perhaps another Kelrathi scientist would be more suitable. I could remain here and—" "You're the lead xenobiologist on this project, Zalnara," Threll interrupted. "Your expertise is required. Is there a problem?" "No, Commander," she said quietly. After they left the office, Marcus tried to catch up with Zalnara in the corridor. "Hey, are you okay with this assignment? You seemed hesitant back there." Zalnara didn't slow down. "My personal feelings are irrelevant. The research must be completed." "Yeah, but 3 weeks in close quarters. If you're uncomfortable working with me, I can request—" "I did not say I was uncomfortable with you, Dr. Webb," Zalnara said, stopping suddenly. She turned to face him, and for the first time Marcus saw something in her eyes that looked like fear. "I am uncomfortable with many things, but not specifically with you." "Okay," Marcus said gently. "If you need to talk about anything, I'm here. I know I can be a bit much sometimes, but I'm a good listener." Zalnara studied him for a moment. "Humans are very strange," she said finally. "You offer friendship to those who have given you no reason to care. That's kind of how friendship starts, isn't it? You care first, then you find the reasons." Zalnara made a sound that Marcus's translator couldn't interpret. Then she walked away, her heavy robe swishing behind her. 2 days later, Marcus stood in the docking bay with his packed equipment. The research vessel, Endeavor, waited, small but well-equipped for their journey. Zalnara arrived precisely on time, carrying her own gear, still wrapped in that concealing robe. As they boarded the ship, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment would change things. He didn't know how or why, but something told him that 3 weeks alone with Zalnara would reveal truths that the sterile research station had kept hidden. The ship's engines hummed to life. Marcus took one last look at the station through the viewport, then turned toward the crew quarters where Zalnara had already disappeared. "Well," he said to himself, "this should be interesting." The Endeavor detached from the station and began its journey toward the high-gravity moon. Inside, 2 scientists from different worlds prepared for an expedition that would test more than just human adaptation to gravity. It would test the boundaries of understanding, acceptance, and the courage to be seen. The research vessel Endeavor was small but comfortable. It had 2 private sleeping quarters, a shared lab space, a common area with food storage, and a hygiene facility. Marcus had been on worse assignments. The ship's AI handled navigation while they focused on preparing for their field work. The first 3 days were painfully quiet. Zalnara stayed in her quarters most of the time, emerging only for necessary work in the lab. When they did interact, she was perfectly professional and completely distant. Marcus tried his usual approach: friendly jokes, casual questions about her interests, offers to share meals. Each attempt was met with polite deflection. On the 4th day, Marcus was running baseline physiological tests on himself. The project required detailed data on how his human body functioned in normal conditions before they reached the high-gravity environment. He sat shirtless in the medical scanner while the equipment recorded his vital signs. Zalnara entered the lab to check the data feeds. She stopped when she saw him, her compound eyes fixed on his exposed torso. "Sorry. Should I have warned you?" Marcus asked. "The scanner works better without clothing interference." No, it is acceptable. I simply have not observed human physiology so directly before." She moved to the computer terminal, careful not to look at him again. "Your species has significant variation in form." "Yeah. We come in all shapes and sizes," Marcus said cheerfully. "I'm on the stockier side. My dad was built like a bear. My sister is tall and thin. My mom was short and round. All human, all healthy, all different." "The Kelrathi do not have such variation," Zalnara said quietly. "Really? I mean, there must be some differences, right? No species is completely uniform. There are acceptable variations and unacceptable ones." Her voice had gone very soft. Marcus wanted to pursue that topic, but the scanner beeped, indicating his baseline tests were complete. He put his shirt back on and checked the data. "Looks good. We'll have excellent comparison data for when we reach GX447. The next few days followed the same pattern: polite distance, professional interactions, long silences. On day 7, Marcus was in the common area, watching a video message from his sister back on Earth. She was complaining cheerfully about her new apartment, her difficult boss, and her latest dating disaster. Marcus laughed at her jokes, feeling a pang of homesickness. He didn't notice that Zalnara had entered the room until she spoke. "Your family communicates with you frequently," she observed. Marcus paused the video. "Yeah, my sister sends messages every week. Drives me crazy sometimes, but I'd miss it if she stopped. Do you have family you stay in touch with?" "No." Zalnara moved to the food storage unit, retrieving one of the nutrient containers designed for Kelrathi biology. "My family does not acknowledge my communications." "Oh, I'm sorry. That must be difficult. It is the expected outcome for one such as me." Marcus frowned. "One such as you? You mean a scientist? Someone who left home to work on a neutral station?" Zalnara was quiet for a long moment. "You truly do not know?" "Know what?" She sat down at the far end of the table, still keeping distance between them. "Dr. Webb." "Marcus. What do you see when you look at me?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I see a brilliant scientist, someone who's dedicated to her work, someone who's very private, which is fine, someone who seems sad sometimes, which worries me a little." "You do not see the deformity?" The word hit Marcus like a punch. "Deformity? Zalnara, what are you talking about?" "I am malformed by Kelrathi standards. My exoskeleton is too broad, my proportions are incorrect. My movements lack the grace expected of my people. I am, in the eyes of my society, a genetic failure." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You're not deformed. You're just you." "The robes I wear," Zalnara continued, as if he hadn't spoken, "I wear them to hide my shame. Other Kelrathi know what I am when they see me, but at least I do not force them to look upon my inadequate form." "Zalnara, I was allowed to become a scientist only because my intellectual scores were exceptional. It was decided that despite my physical failings, I could contribute to Kelrathi advancement in other ways. But I am still less. I will always be less." Marcus stood up and moved closer, though he was careful not to invade her space. "Listen to me. Your people are wrong. Whatever standards they're using, whatever judgments they're making, they're wrong." "You say that because humans have different standards." "No. I say that because I know what happens when a society decides there's only one acceptable way to exist." Marcus sat down, closer now but still respectful of her boundaries. "Humans have a dark history with this stuff. We've done terrible things when we decided some people were better than others. Based on skin color, body type, intelligence, You name it. We've committed genocide, practiced eugenics, destroyed lives because we were obsessed with some imaginary idea of perfection. Zalnara turned her head to look at him fully. And now we know better, or at least most of us do. We learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. Every body type, every variation. It all came from adaptation to different environments, different needs. There's no such thing as one perfect human form because we needed to survive in every climate on Earth. Forests, deserts, mountains, islands. We adapted to all of it. And that meant we came in different sizes, different colors, different shapes. The Kelrathi prize uniformity, Zalnara said. It is a sign of our evolutionary success. We have eliminated weakness. Or maybe you've eliminated adaptability, Marcus suggested gently. What happens when your people need to colonize a world that requires different physical traits? What happens when the perfect Kelrathi form isn't suited for the environment? Zalnara was quiet. I had a sister who almost died from an eating disorder, Marcus said softly. She looked at magazine images of impossibly thin models and decided she wasn't good enough. She starved herself trying to match an artificial standard. My parents got her help and she recovered, but it took years. And it was all because society told her there was only one way to be beautiful. I am sorry for your sister's suffering. The point is, those standards are arbitrary. They change all the time. On Earth, different cultures, different time periods. They all had different ideas about what was attractive or acceptable. In some eras, larger bodies were prized because they showed wealth and health. In others, thin was considered ideal. It's all made up. It's all arbitrary. You are saying beauty is subjective. I'm saying that rigid definitions of acceptable are usually garbage, Marcus said bluntly. And anyone who treats you as less than because you don't match their narrow standards is missing out on knowing an amazing person. Zalnara made a sound that Marcus had never heard before, a soft, oscillating hum that his translator interpreted as a sad laugh. You barely know me, Marcus. We have worked together for only weeks. True, but I know enough to know that you're brilliant, dedicated, and brave enough to keep working despite being treated poorly by your own people. That's impressive. I am not brave. I simply have no other options. Bravery isn't about having options. It's about facing difficulty even when you're scared. On day 9, disaster struck, though it was a minor disaster by space travel standards. A solar flare caused a power surge that damaged the ship's temperature regulation system. The Endeavour began to heat up. The repair will take several hours, the ship's AI announced. Temperature will rise by approximately 15 degrees. Discomfort is expected. Marcus groaned. Great. I hate being hot. He pulled off his jacket and outer shirt, leaving just a thin tank top and his work pants. Zalnara remained in her heavy robe, though Marcus could see that the heat was affecting her. Kelrathi regulated temperature differently than humans, and the thick fabric wasn't helping. You should take off some layers, Marcus suggested. You're going to overheat. I am adequate. Zalnara, there's no one here but me. And I've already told you, I don't judge bodies by arbitrary standards. Please, take off the robe before you get sick. She hesitated for a long moment. Then, slowly, she unfastened the outer robe. Underneath, she wore a thinner lab garment that showed her form more clearly. She was broader than the Kelrathi Marcus had seen, yes. Her exoskeleton had a different pattern, thicker in some places. But she wasn't deformed. She was just different. See? Marcus said, looking at her directly. Just a person, just Zalnara. She met his eyes, and for the first time since they'd met, she didn't look away. The moon, GX447, was a harsh, beautiful place. Rocky terrain stretched in all directions under a dark purple sky. The gravity was 1.4 times Earth standard, not crushing, but enough to make every movement require extra effort. The research habitat sat in a sheltered valley, a small dome of protection against the alien environment. Marcus felt the gravity the moment they landed. His legs protested, his back ached, and even breathing took more effort. But humans were adaptable. He'd adjust. Zalnara seemed to handle it better than he expected. Her broader build, the very thing her people called a deformity, gave her a lower center of gravity. She moved with more confidence here than she had on the station. "How are you managing the gravity?" Marcus asked as they unpacked equipment. "Better than anticipated," Zalnara admitted. "The additional weight is distributed across my frame more efficiently than it would be for standard Kelrathi physiology." "So your body is actually better suited for this environment?" "That is one interpretation, yes." Marcus grinned. "Sounds like evolutionary adaptation to me. Where did you grow up, Zalnara? What was the gravity like there?" She was quiet for a moment, organizing equipment with precise movements. "I was born on a colony world called Kelthar. It was an experimental settlement on a planet with higher gravity than our home world. The Kelrathi Council wanted to expand our territory, and Kelthar was resource-rich." "What happened?" "The colony was unsuccessful. The higher gravity affected Kelrathi development. Those of us born there grew differently. Broader, heavier, less graceful by homeworld standards. After 2 generations, the council deemed the colony unsuitable and abandoned it." Marcus stopped unpacking. "They abandoned the people too?" "Most of the children born on Kelthar were left behind when the colony was evacuated. We were considered evolutionary failures, not worth the resources to transport. Some died. Some were eventually retrieved by family members who felt enough shame to care for us. I was among the retrieved, though my parents made it clear I was a burden they bore out of duty." Anger burned in Marcus's chest. "That's monstrous." "That is Kelrathi efficiency," Zalnara said flatly. "Resources are allocated to the genetically superior. I survived only because I tested exceptionally high in analytical intelligence. I was permitted to pursue education, to contribute to the species despite my physical inadequacy." "You're not inadequate. Your people's standards are inadequate." Marcus turned to face her fully. "Everything you just told me says that your body adapted perfectly to your birthplace. You're not defective. You're evolved for different conditions. Your people couldn't see past their rigid definitions to recognize that." "Perhaps," Zalnara said softly, "but it changes nothing. I am still what I am." Over the next week, they fell into a routine. Marcus ran adaptation tests on himself, documenting how his human body adjusted to the higher gravity. Zalnara analyzed the data and conducted geological surveys of the surrounding area. They worked well together, and slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. Zalnara stopped wearing the heavy outer robe inside the habitat. She still kept the lighter lab garments, but it was progress. Marcus told stories about Earth, about human history, about the messy, complicated way his species had learned to accept diversity. Zalnara listened, occasionally asking questions that showed she was genuinely interested. On day 12, everything changed. They were on a specimen collection expedition, hiking across the rocky terrain to reach a location with unique mineral formations. Marcus was so focused on the scanner in his hand that he didn't notice the loose stone beneath his foot. He fell hard, his ankle twisting at a wrong angle. Pain shot up his leg, sharp and immediate. "Marcus!" Zalnara was beside him in moments. Her hands, surprisingly gentle for their chitinous structure, examined his ankle. "Can you stand?" He tried and immediately regretted it. "Not well. I think it's just a sprain, but we need to return to the habitat now." Zalnara's voice was firm. "Lean on me." She removed her outer lab coat to move more freely, revealing her full form in just the thin undergarment. Marcus barely noticed in his pain. He put his arm across her shoulders, and she supported his weight easily. The walk back was long and difficult. The higher gravity made everything worse. But Zalnara never complained, never faltered. Her broader frame, her lower center of gravity, her denser musculature, everything her people called deformities, these were exactly what allowed her to support Marcus and get him home safely. Inside the habitat, she helped him to the medical station and began treating his ankle. Her movements were efficient and precise. "Thank you," Marcus said through gritted teeth as she applied stabilizing gel. "I'm sorry for being clumsy. Accidents occur. It is not a moral failing." She adjusted the medical scanner. "Your ankle is sprained but not broken. You will need to rest for several days. There goes our research schedule. The research can wait. Your health cannot." She finished the treatment and handed him pain medication. "Rest now. I will prepare food." Marcus watched her move around the habitat. Without the concealing robe, he could see her form clearly. She was bigger than other Kelrathi, yes, but there was a strength to her structure, a solidity. In the higher gravity of this moon, she moved with a grace that would have been impossible for the slender Kelrathi back on the station. "Zalnara," he said quietly, "can I tell you what I see when I look at you?" She stiffened. "That is unnecessary. Please, hear me out." He waited until she turned to face him. "I see someone who is perfectly adapted to environments that other Kelrathi couldn't survive. I see efficiency and strength. I see a body that evolved to match its birthplace. And yeah, I also see someone who's been hurt by people who should have protected you. But I don't see deformity. I never have. You are kind to say so. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest. Do you know what happened to humans when we left Earth? We colonized Mars, orbital stations, moon bases. And you know what? We changed. Kids born in low gravity grew taller and thinner. Kids born in high gravity grew stockier and stronger. Some people freaked out about it at first, called it unnatural, tried to force everyone to maintain pure Earth human characteristics. "What happened to those people?" Zalnara asked. "They lost, because reality doesn't care about our artificial standards. The tall, thin Mars colonists could do things Earth humans couldn't in low gravity. The stocky, high-gravity colonists had advantages in their environments. We needed all those variations to expand across the solar system. Diversity became our greatest strength." Zalnara sat down slowly in the chair across from him. "The Kelrathi Council believes uniformity is strength. They believe genetic purity ensures survival. The Kelrathi Council is wrong, and somewhere deep down I think you know that." "I know that I am tired," Zalnara said quietly. "Tired of hiding, tired of shame, tired of being treated as less than. But knowing they are wrong does not make their judgment hurt less." Marcus leaned forward, ignoring the protest from his ankle. "Then stop letting their judgment define you. You're not here because they allowed it. You're here because you earned it. Your intelligence, your dedication, your skills, those are yours. They didn't give you those things. They gave me the opportunity to develop them. Only because they were too rigid to see that you were exactly what a Kelrathi should be, adapted, strong, and brilliant. They almost threw away one of their best scientists because she didn't fit a template." For a long moment, Zalnara said nothing. Then she made that soft, sad humming sound again. "You are very strange, Marcus Webb. You see value where my own people see only failure. Maybe I just see more clearly. Or maybe humans have made enough mistakes that we learn to look past the surface." "Will you tell me more?" Zalnara asked. "About how humans learned this lesson?" So Marcus told her. He spoke about eugenics programs, about genocide, about the countless times humans had tried to create a superior version of themselves by eliminating those they deemed inferior. He talked about the wars fought over such thinking, the millions who died, the cultures destroyed. And he told her about the slow, painful journey toward acceptance, about civil rights movements, about body positivity, about the gradual understanding that every human variation had value. It wasn't a finished journey. Humans still struggled with prejudice and narrow standards, but they'd come far enough to know that diversity was survival. Zal-Nara listened to all of it, her compound eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Thank you," she finally said, "for trusting me with your species' darkest moments. And for showing me that change is possible." "Change is always possible," Marcus said. "Sometimes it just takes one person being brave enough to question the standards." That night, as Marcus rested his injured ankle, Zal-Nara worked at the research station without her robe. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it was a beginning. Marcus's ankle healed over the next few days. He used the recovery time to organize data while Zal-Nara continued the field work. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. They had crossed some invisible boundary, moving from colleagues to something closer to friends. On day 19, Zal-Nara did something unexpected. She brought a data tablet to their evening meal and set it in front of Marcus. "I want to show you something," she said, "if you are interested." Marcus looked at the tablet. It displayed Kelrathi art, images of perfect, symmetrical forms arranged in precise geometric patterns. Everything was elegant, controlled, flawless. "This is what Kelrathi culture values," Zal-Nara explained. "Beauty through perfection, order through uniformity. These are the celebrated works, displayed in our greatest museums." "It's technically impressive," Marcus said carefully, "but it feels cold." "Yes." Zal-Nara swiped to a different folder. "Now look at this." The new images were completely different. They were raw, emotional, chaotic in places. The Kelrathi forms in these artworks were varied. Some thin, some broad, some asymmetrical. The colors were vibrant instead of muted. The compositions were dynamic instead of balanced. "This is forbidden art," Zal-Nara said quietly, "created by the imperfect ones. Those of us who don't meet the standards. We share it secretly, through encrypted networks. It is considered degenerate by the Council." Marcus studied the images carefully. "This is beautiful. This is real. The Council says it celebrates genetic failure, that it glorifies weakness." "The Council is terrified," Marcus said. "This art is threatening because it shows that there are other ways to be Kelrathi, other ways to be beautiful. It challenges their control." Zal-Nara made an agreeing sound. "I have contributed to this collection. Small pieces, nothing significant, but it helps to create something without hiding. Can you show me?" She hesitated, then swiped to a piece near the end of the collection. It was a sculpture design, a Kelrathi form that was clearly broader than standard, standing in what looked like a high-gravity environment. The figure was strong, grounded, unashamed. Is this you?" Marcus asked. "An idealized version, perhaps. What I wish I could be." "You already are this," Marcus said firmly. "You just don't see it yet." Over the next few days, Zal-Nara shared more with him. She showed him forbidden Kelrathi poetry that spoke of pain and exclusion. She played music that was too emotional, too varied in rhythm to be acceptable by Council standards. She revealed a whole hidden culture of Kelrathi who refused to disappear despite being rejected by their own people. Marcus, in turn, shared human art spanning millennia. He showed her the Venus of Willendorf, a prehistoric sculpture of a full-figured woman. Renaissance paintings of soft, round bodies. Modern photography celebrating every body type imaginable. He played her music from cultures around the world, each with different aesthetics and values. "Humans had to learn this the hard way," Marcus explained. "Every time we decided there was only one right way to look, to be, to exist, we caused suffering. We're still learning, still making mistakes. But we figured out that beauty and worth aren't found in matching a template. They're found in being authentic. Authentic, Zalnara repeated the word. I am not certain I know how to be that. I have spent my entire life hiding. Then maybe it's time to stop. On day 21, disaster struck again. Though this time it was mechanical rather than personal. A massive dust storm swept across GX447, coating everything in fine, abrasive particles. The habitat's external sensors went offline, and the air filtration system struggled. We need to run a full decontamination protocol, Zalnara said, checking the systems. The dust has compromised the environmental seals. What does that involve? Complete biological decontamination. The system will scan us at the cellular level, remove any contaminated particles. It requires... She paused. It requires removing all garments. The scanner cannot work through fabric. Marcus saw her stiffen, saw the fear cross her features. Okay, he said calmly. No problem. When do we need to do this? Within the next hour, before the dust particles begin to affect our respiratory systems. They worked in silence to finish securing the habitat. The entire time, Marcus could see Zalnara's growing anxiety. Her movements became more rigid, more controlled. She was preparing herself for something she clearly dreaded. When everything was ready, they stood outside the decontamination chamber. It was a circular room with scanning arrays built into the walls. The process was simple. Enter. Allow the scan. Exit clean. Marcus had done it dozens of times on various stations and ships. But for Zalnara, this was different. This meant standing without any covering, fully visible, completely exposed. Marcus entered the chamber first, removing his clothes and standing in the scanner. The blue light swept over him, and the system's pleasant voice announced, "Decontamination complete. No harmful particles detected." He dressed quickly and stepped out. Zalnara stood at the entrance, her hands on the clasps of her lab garment. She was trembling. "I cannot," she whispered. "You can," Marcus said gently, "and I'll be right here when you come out. You do not understand. If you see me fully, without concealment, you will understand why my people reject me. You will see the truth of what I am." Marcus moved closer, careful not to crowd her. "Zalnara, I already know what you are. You're brilliant, kind, stronger than you realize, and one of the best scientists I've ever worked with. Nothing about your physical form is going to change that. You say that because you have only seen me partially clothed. The full extent of my deformity—" "Stop," Marcus interrupted, his voice firm but kind. "Stop calling yourself that. You're not deformed. You're adapted. You're different. And different doesn't mean wrong. In Kelrathi culture, we're not in Kelrathi culture right now. We're in a research habitat on a moon where your body type works better than the standard would. We're in a place where I've seen you save my life because you were strong enough to carry me. We're standing here as equals, as friends, and nothing you look like is going to change how I see you as a person." Zalnara's hands still rested on the clasps. "I am frightened, Marcus. I have never allowed anyone to see me fully. Not since I was a child on Kelthar, before I learned to be ashamed. Then maybe it's time to stop being ashamed. Maybe it's time to let one person see you and not judge you for it." She looked up at him, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. "If I do this, if I allow you to see me, do you think you will find me revolting?" The question hung in the air between them. Marcus understood the weight of it. This wasn't about the decontamination protocol. This was about everything, every rejection, every moment of shame, every time someone had made her feel less than. "No," Marcus said clearly. "I don't think I'll find you revolting. I think I'll see you as you really are. And I don't think I'll even blink." Zalnara took a shaking breath. Then slowly, she unfastened the clasps. The lab garment fell away. Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. Her exoskeleton was broader than standard Kelrathi physiology, yes. The plates were thicker, arranged in slightly different patterns. Her torso was wider, her limbs more substantial. By the rigid standards of her people, she was incorrectly proportioned. By any objective standard, she was exactly what Marcus had said, adapted for higher gravity environments. Her structure was reinforced, stable, efficient. He could see the biological logic in every aspect of her form. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't look away. "Zalnara," he said quietly, meeting her eyes. "Do you know what I see?" She couldn't speak. She stood there, vulnerable and terrified, waiting for judgment. "I see someone whose body is brilliantly adapted for survival in challenging environments. Your exoskeleton structure is reinforced, probably stronger than standard Kelrathi. Your center of gravity is lower, more stable. Your musculature is denser. Evolution didn't make you wrong. It made you perfect for a different purpose. Your people were just too rigid to see it. You truly..." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You truly do not find me disgusting?" "I find you remarkable, and I'm honored that you trusted me enough to show me who you really are." Zalnara stood there for a long moment, processing his words. Then she stepped into the decontamination chamber. The blue light swept over her, revealing every aspect of her form in precise detail. The scanner completed its work. When she emerged and dressed again, something had changed in her posture. Her head was held slightly higher. Her movements were less apologetic. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For seeing me. For not looking away." She paused. "For being the first person since my childhood to look at me without disgust or pity." "That's not something you need to thank me for," Marcus said. "That's just basic decency. I'm sorry you've experienced so little of it." That night, they sat together in the habitat's common area. Zalnara didn't put on her heavy robe. She wore just the standard lab garments, her form visible, her shame finally beginning to fade. "Marcus," she said softly, "do you think change is possible? Not just for me, but for my people?" "I think," Marcus said, "that change starts with one person being brave enough to stand up and say, 'I'm done hiding.' And you just did that. So yes, I think change is possible. It might take time, but it's possible." Zalnara made that humming sound again, but this time it didn't sound sad. It sounded almost hopeful. 3 months after returning from GX447, Marcus sat in his quarters on the diplomatic station, reviewing the final draft of their research paper. The data was solid, the analysis was brilliant, and the implications were significant. The paper wasn't just about human adaptation to high-gravity environments. It had expanded into something much more important: a comprehensive study of how different body types responded to various gravitational conditions. The data proved, objectively and scientifically, that diversity in physical form was an advantage for any species attempting to colonize diverse environments. A Kelrathi built for low-gravity elegance would struggle on high-gravity worlds. But someone built like Zalnara would thrive there. The galaxy had thousands of different planetary environments, and no single body type was optimal for all of them. Marcus added a final note to the conclusion section, then sent the draft to Zalnara for her review. She responded within minutes. "It is excellent. Submit it." Marcus smiled and sent the paper to the station's research journal. Within hours, it would be distributed across the scientific community, reaching dozens of species across multiple systems. He left his quarters and headed to Lab Section 7. Zalnara was there, working at her station. She wore a simple lab garment, no heavy robes, no concealing layers. It had been that way since they returned from the mission. The change hadn't gone unnoticed. Other Kelrathi still stared, still made their disapproving clicks. But Zalnara no longer hunched her shoulders or hurried away. She met their gazes and continued with her work. "The paper is submitted," Marcus announced. "Get ready for a flood of responses." "I am prepared," Zalnara said, "though I expect the Kelrathi scientific community will be resistant to our conclusions." "Probably. But data doesn't care about cultural biases." Over the next few weeks, responses began arriving. Human scientists were enthusiastic. The paper confirmed theories they'd already suspected. Several other species expressed interest in collaborating on follow-up studies. The Kelrathi responses were mixed. Some dismissed the paper entirely, calling it an attempt to justify genetic deviation. But others, particularly younger scientists, engaged seriously with the data. They couldn't deny the mathematics, couldn't argue with the objective measurements. One response came from a Kelrathi colony that Marcus hadn't heard of before. The message was addressed to Zalnara personally. Marcus watched as she read it, her compound eyes moving rapidly across the screen. When she finished, she looked up with an expression he'd never seen before, something like wonder. "It is from Kelthar," she said quietly. "My birth world, the colony that was abandoned. I thought it was shut down." It was. But apparently, a group of Kelrathi returned there 10 years ago. Those of us born there, those who were considered defective. Some of us went back. They have been rebuilding the colony in secret, without council approval. "That's amazing. What do they want?" "They want me to visit. They need scientists, and they say—" She paused, her voice catching slightly. "They say my expertise in high-gravity adaptation would be invaluable. They are specifically seeking Kelrathi with my body type." Marcus felt a surge of joy for her. "Zalnara, that's incredible. They are calling themselves the Adapted," she continued, still reading. "They reject the homeworld standards and are building a new culture based on practical survival rather than aesthetic uniformity. They want me to help establish research protocols for high-gravity colonization." "Are you going to go?" Zalnara looked at him. "Would you think less of me if I did? If I left this station to join them?" "Are you kidding? I think it's perfect. You'd be with people who understand, who value you for exactly who you are. Plus, the research opportunities would be fantastic." "The council will not approve. They barely tolerate my presence here. If I join an unauthorized colony, then let them disapprove," Marcus said firmly. "You've spent your whole life trying to earn acceptance from people who will never give it. Maybe it's time to find acceptance from people who already see your worth." Zalnara was quiet for a long moment. "I am frightened," she admitted. "What if I go there and they are disappointed? What if I am not what they hoped?" "Then you'll deal with it. But I don't think that's going to happen. They specifically asked for you, knowing exactly what you look like, what you've experienced. They want you because of who you are, not despite it." Over the next few days, more messages arrived. The adapted colony wasn't the only one interested in their research. 2 other high-gravity settlements, one human, one multi-species, requested permission to cite their work and collaborate on future projects. Most surprising was a message from a young Kelrathi scientist still on the homeworld. She wrote to Zalnara privately, confessing that she too had been born on a failed colony world, that she too had been considered defective. She had been hiding it, using genetic suppressants to modify her appearance. But after reading the research paper, she was reconsidering. "Your work shows that we are not failures," the young scientist wrote. "We are adaptations. I am tired of hiding. Thank you for being brave enough to publish this." Zalnara read the message to Marcus, her voice unsteady. "I never thought—" I did not realize others were hiding too. I thought I was alone. You were never alone, Marcus said gently. You were just isolated. There's a difference. More messages came. Some were angry, calling the research dangerous and irresponsible, but others were grateful, relieved, hopeful. Kelrathi, who had been hiding their deformities, began to speak up. Some asked for advice, some shared their own stories, some simply said, "Thank you." A movement was beginning, small but growing. 2 weeks after the paper's publication, Marcus was in the station cafeteria when he witnessed something remarkable. Zalnara entered, heading toward her usual isolated table. But before she could sit down, one of the younger Kelrathi scientists called out to her. "Zalnara, would you join us? We are discussing the implications of your research on colonization strategies." Zalnara froze. Marcus held his breath. "I would be honored," Zalnara said finally, moving to join the group. As she sat down, Marcus saw one of the older Kelrathi scientists, a male with perfect proportions and gleaming carapace, make a disapproving click. But a young female scientist immediately responded with her own click, sharper and more assertive. Marcus's translator caught fragments, outdated thinking, and evidence-based conclusions. The old guard was being challenged. A month after their paper's publication, Marcus received a promotion offer. He could transfer to any station or research facility in human space. He could lead his own research team. It was everything he'd worked toward. He went to find Zalnara in the lab. She was preparing samples, her movements confident and precise. "I got a promotion offer," Marcus said. She turned to face him. "That is excellent news. You deserve recognition for your work. Where will you go?" "I was thinking about that. And I had an idea. What if we continued working together? The adapted colony on Kel Thar needs research protocols established. A human Kelrathi team could bring unique perspectives. We could study cross-species adaptation, establish best practices for high-gravity colonization, maybe even develop new frameworks for understanding diversity as evolutionary strength. You would leave human space to work on a Kelrathi colony? An unauthorized one that the Council opposes? I'd follow good science wherever it leads, and honestly, I'd miss working with you. We make a good team." Zalnara made that humming sound, but it was joyful now. "We do make a good team. Very well, Marcus Webb. Let us go to Kelthar together. Let us build something new." 3 weeks later, they attended a diplomatic function together, a mandatory social event for all station scientists. It was tedious, full of small talk and political posturing. Marcus was ready to leave early when he overheard a conversation nearby. A Kelrathi official was speaking to a colleague, his voice dripping with disdain. "Did you see that Zalnara creature has stopped hiding herself? Shameless. She parades her deformity as if it were something to be proud of. It is an embarrassment to our species." Before Marcus could respond, another voice cut in, young, firm, confident. "Perhaps it is time we reconsidered what embarrassment means," a young Kelrathi female said. She was petite, perfectly proportioned by traditional standards, but her voice carried authority. "I have read Dr. Zalnara's research. The data is sound. Her physical structure is optimally adapted for high-gravity environments. If we as a species wish to expand beyond low-gravity worlds, we will need Kelrathi like her. The humans seem to understand that survival is not about conformity. Perhaps we should learn from them." The older official sputtered, but other young Kelrathi nearby clicked in agreement. The conversation shifted, and Marcus saw Zalnara watching from across the room. Their eyes met, and he saw something in her expression that made his heart soar: pride. Later, as they walked back to their lab quarters, Zalnara spoke quietly. "Change is happening faster than I expected," she said. "I thought it would take generations. But young Kelrathi are questioning the old standards. They are reading our research, citing our data, using it to challenge the Council's definitions of acceptable. That's how change works sometimes, Marcus said. It builds slowly, then reaches a tipping point. One person speaks up, then another, then another. Before you know it, the whole conversation has shifted. It started with you, Zalnara said. With your refusal to see me as my people saw me. With your insistence that I had value. No, Marcus corrected gently. It started with you being brave enough to work alongside me. Brave enough to remove your robe when the temperature got too high. Brave enough to trust me with the truth. I just happened to have the sense to recognize what was already there. A brilliant, strong, remarkable person who deserved to be seen. They reached the lab entrance, and Zalnara paused. Marcus, I want to tell you something. When we first met, I was prepared to request a transfer within a week. I thought you would react like other species had. Politely uncomfortable, subtly avoiding me. But you did not. You saw past the external to what mattered. And that changed everything for me. I'm glad we ended up working together, Marcus said simply. As am I. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. Hope that I am not doomed to always be less than. Hope that perhaps I am exactly what I should be. You are exactly what you should be, Marcus confirmed, and Kelthar is lucky to be getting you. 2 months later, they boarded a transport heading toward the Kelthar system. The journey would take weeks, but neither of them minded. They had research to plan, protocols to develop, and a new colony to help build. As the station disappeared behind them, Marcus thought about everything that had happened since that first awkward meeting in Lab Section 7. A simple partnership assignment had turned into something much more significant, a friendship that challenged cultural prejudices, research that was shifting scientific conversations, and the beginning of real change. Zalnara stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars without her concealing robe, without shame, without fear. She was herself, fully and completely, and it had all started because one human didn't blink when confronted with difference. He simply saw a person worth knowing, a scientist worth respecting, and a friend worth keeping. Ready for the next adventure? Marcus asked, joining her at the viewport. Ready, Zalnara said. And Marcus, thank you for everything. Thank you for trusting me, for being brave, for showing the galaxy that there are infinite ways to be valuable, infinite ways to be beautiful, and that rigid definitions only limit potential. As their transport jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying them toward a colony built on acceptance rather than exclusion, both scientists felt the same thing. Hope for a future where diversity was celebrated, where difference was strength, and where no one had to hide who they truly were. The message was spreading, slowly, painfully, against resistance, but spreading nonetheless. And it had started with something simple, one person seeing another with clarity, compassion, and respect. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the world.